Growth Show, where we hold candid conversations with fascinating individuals from all walks of life. We interview each of our guests to learn about their passions, successes, and failures, lessons learned, and how they apply personal growth to their lives. At the end of every conversation, we gather key takeaways that we can all implement to better ourselves and the lives of those around us. As always, let us know how we can help you, and please enjoy the show. I'm joined with my good buddy and co-host, Greg Brinkley. Greg, how are you doing today?
Sammy, I'm doing well, and I'm excited that we are joined today by a legitimate superstar. I'm here, you're here. We're joined by Susan Bryant, who is a CPA and owner at MB Group, a public accounting firm headquartered in Plano, Texas. Susan and her team work to transform business owners by professionalizing the finance function in their organization. And there's a secret recipe that Susan created to consistently achieve the success for her clients. She is a fierce advocate for her profession, and she was named as one of the top 50 women in accounting. Susan, welcome to the Pursuit of Growth show.
Thanks so much for having me, Greg and Sammy. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, we're going to get started. So the first question is something that Sammy and I thought would be an interesting and fun way to get our conversation going. If you could have a free billboard with anything on it to share with the world, what would it say and why?
I think I would have a billboard that just said smile, because smiling can transform your own life and the life of others. It can transform your day, your attitude, just how you feel, how others feel. I feel like it's one of those things where it's contagious. And I think happiness is one of those things that we need to spread more of in this world.
I love that. So go ahead, Sammy.
We're probably going to reference the same thing, but one of our previous guests, Victor, he actually mentioned that your brain doesn't know the difference if you smile on purpose or if you smile subconsciously. And so it just the endorphins and everything that come about from a smile is the same if you do it on purpose or if you do it subconsciously. So he said, you know what, just try and smile all the time. Just have a smile on your face and you'll feel better.
Yeah. And, it's even like sometimes even answering the phone, just answer the phone. And if your voice is happy and you are smiling on the other end, an entire conversation can go a direction that you had no idea it was going to go. I mean, something that maybe you thought was going to be bad turns out to be really great. And it kind of brings you into this mindset of more solution oriented. How can I make this joyful instead of negative? I think that's just one of those things where, happiness is a work ethic. I can't remember where I read that or saw that, but I have that written down on my board that I keep in my office. And I look at it every day because to me, that's what keeps me going. Like, I know if I can work at being happy, then I can work at anything else.
That's incredible because, again, you're right. Like, your attitude, the way that you go about living your life, you've got to do it with intention. And it's amazing how when we talk about smiling, this is probably going back maybe 6 or 7 months ago. It was during the pandemic. And I forget the exact scenario that I was at, but we were in a grocery store, and this is a friend of mine and myself, and we were just kind of challenging each other. What will happen if you just smile at random strangers? How many people can we get just to smile back? And I'm not exaggerating when I say 100% of the people that we just smiled at, not in a creepy, weird way, flashed a smile back. Now, we followed it with like a hi, how are you doing? Just like an introduction, so it's not weird. But like you said, it's absolutely contagious. And Sammy and I are huge believers in mindset and attitude. And it's amazing how you're exactly right. You can control the way you think. You can control the way that your mind processes things because we all have a choice. We can view the negative or we can spin it to a positive. And that doesn't ignore the circumstance or the situation. A challenge is still a challenge, but you can approach it with a positive attitude or a negative attitude. And to a T, when you approach something with a positive attitude, you're going to get a better result than if you approach it with some type of negative aspect of the sky is falling.
Yeah, I was introduced to a book not too long ago and I haven't finished it completely, but it's called The Happiness Advantage. I don't know if you've heard of it before.
No.
But it's the author was a Harvard student, and his background was like he was really unsure why there were so many students at Harvard that were so unhappy. Like they're at Harvard. He was like, I'm from Waco, Texas. And he applied to Harvard on a whim, got in, and he's at Harvard. Wow. And he can't understand why so many students are so unhappy. It completely boggles his mind. So he spent like 12 years at Harvard, like studying these kids to try to understand this. And one of the cool things that he learned after he, went through studying the students and started applying even more research principles to it was that if you think a positive thought before you take a test, you're going to do better. Mm-hmm. If you think a happy thought before you try to make a sale, you're like 60% more likely to make a sale. If you think a happy thought before you, like they said, doctors, before they go into like a diagnose a patient, they're 20% more likely to get to the diagnosis faster. Wow. I mean, this is phenomenal. Like we all need to be doing this.
Yeah.
And it's, what's so crazy is that all of that, right? All the research can be predicated back down to like a smile. Something as easy to do as that just opens up the pathways and the neurons within the brain and then makes the human connections of just like simply like moving your lips around. And then everyone is instantly in a better 20% more likely to get to a diagnosis faster. Like that's incredible. Like just imagine if you can get 20% better at doing one little thing every single day before you do it. That's amazing.
Yeah. Remarkable. Right. I mean, and you would think like accountants, this is like some of the most tedious, demanding work. Like, I think we have to have like even better skills at really finding the happiness in it. I like to tell people, especially when they, come into accounting, accounting is one of those things where it's infinite. I mean, as we sit here right now talking, there's millions and millions of transactions happening. Our job is never done, like ever done. It goes on, it's perpetual. And so if you really dwell on that, you will like want to crumble into like, you'll be a pool basically on the floor. But if you really kind of get centered on like, I'm going to approach this, I'm going to be happy about what I'm doing, find good in the work that I do, each task along the way, it's easier to process, it's easier to digest, right? And if we can boil down what we do and correlate it to the bigger outcome of what we're trying to achieve too, then it leads to that happiness. Like I made a big difference in this person's life because I did these 10 things. And it might seem like monotonous, routine, but it has a really huge impact. And you got to keep your eye on that. You got to keep focused on that long term.
Yeah, well, I'd be curious to know when you talked about, happiness, it's being intentional about being happy and it's work. Are there a few things, and I'm sure there's many, there's probably several things that you do, but could you share for our audience maybe a couple of things that you do that you found successful in your life?
Yes. Well, I think that for me, I like to correlate everything that I do with a mission of some kind. So like what I do in my business, like we have a core business mission, that's to transform businesses and the lives of their owners. And everything we do to make money in our business is correlated to that mission. And I have spent a lot of time trying to identify, even down to the simple tasks that we're doing, how it all relates back to that mission. But along the way, there's other things that we have to have our eye on. And that is that we have to have a mission that's bigger than just business, bigger than just making money. And for me, that mission there's two other missions that sort of go with that. And one is that I'm on a mission to transform our industry. Public accounting is notorious for having terrible work hours, bad environments, people not growing and developing, and people are leaving public accounting by, just droves or retiring. It's, I'm sure you've heard lots of stories about people who are like, I am out of here. But that transformation is essential to our profession. And then sort of the thing that happens if we transform our clients and we transform our industry, I believe we will be transformed. We'll be better humans, better friends, neighbors, daughters, mothers, all, whatever, sisters, brothers, it doesn't matter. We will become better for our kids, our community, our families. And that to me is what we're really striving toward.
That's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective that you have there too, especially coming from a business owner. And, in your particular world, where do you think that stems from? Where did you start to think, or when did you start to think this way?
I'm going to relate it back to at one point in time, I actually felt like my work was a penitentiary. I refer
Mm,
to it that way. I mean, which is sort of frightening
right.
Mhm.
to think of. And I met a woman who was a life coach, and she guided me through this exercise of re-envisioning what made me happy in my life. And I believe that working with her and really beginning to use my imagination, so not looking at the world as all these, through a lens of limiting beliefs, like, well, this, I'm only ever going to get this project, I'm only ever going to move this direction, but really starting to use our brain to be more creative. I mean, she opened up a whole new world for me. And that was, I think, the pivotal moment for me in helping me to think differently. It's the same work. I'm doing the same work. It's the same company, but it's completely different now. And that's right here in the
Yeah.
brain,
Yeah,
100%.
there's the saying that we've heard in some shape, form, or fashion for so many years that, find job that gives you passion. Well, Sammy and I always try to reverse that. We're like, don't find a job that gives you passion. Give passion to your job. Give passion to your work. That excitement comes from you. That love comes from you. And you can find the ways to find the purpose and the intent and the joy in just about anything if you frame your mind right. Now, of course, we want to find work that lines up and aligns with our strengths and the things that come natural to us. But there's so much about, I love what you said about that mission statement and that purpose. And so we actually released a blog probably about 4 or 5 months ago that talked about challenging people to find your own mission statement, whether it's personal, professional, or all encompassing and combines both. And I can tell you for me, that was one of those key things that really helped me jump to the next level in terms of my attitude, was because everything that happens in my life now, I can put it and ask myself, how does this align with my mission statement? And where can I find the value in going through this joy, this hardship, whatever it might be? And so I love the fact that you shared that, because I hope that spawns people to think, man, maybe there's a different way I can look at my work. Maybe there's a different way that I can look at even my personal life and the things that I'm doing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, I mean, I joke with my husband all the time. Like, I mean, I meet with so many business owners and we have a lot of conversations about them. And I mean, one of the things that I say all the time is like,
Do we have a temporary freeze?
Temporary freeze. Let's see if it comes right back.
All right. Well, this freeze is brought to you
there
by
we go.
ham.
There we go.
Uh-oh,
Put
sorry,
it on a
guys.
sandwich. Are you back, Susan?
I'm here. I don't know what happened.
No worries.
What I was saying was is that the business owners just aren't dreaming big enough. They don't, or they're not dreaming at all. Their imagination is stifled and they're jaded by their reality, the hamster wheel, as I like to call it, right? They're just on the hamster wheel and they've forgotten how, I mean, like, be a kid and dream a little. Like, well, what if I could, change the world? What if so I was telling my husband, like, I am going to be the person to change public accounting. And he's like, Susan, there's no one person who can change the entire world. I'm like, what, are you kidding me? Like, Jesus has completely transformed people's lives through his vision of Amazon. Now it's changed a million times. It's completely, evolved, but there's no person in America that is untouched by Amazon.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's crazy. One person. So if he can do it, can too. But we got to dream a little bigger. We got to think bigger, right?
So when you talk about creativity and you talk about so many business owners, that's something that they're lacking. And through a Vistage group that I'm in, which you're in a Vistage group as well, which is a peer coaching network that we're all a part of, I guess this has probably been a year or two ago that we had a speaker that talked to us about when you're in the weeds of your work or whatever it might be, your creative brain is turned off. And so he talks about if you're going to have that creative side, and for most business owners or C-level executives, you're constantly in that just go, 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 go mode. Do you actually allocate time to say, this is where I'm going to be creative, or is this something that just comes naturally to you?
I think we have to dedicate time to those things that allow us the freedom to be creative. Yes, I think we have to block off that time off of our calendar, and we have to be better and okay with delegating things to other people. Like it might not be perfect, but it's 80% good, right?
Yeah.
And I got to be okay with that. That's the only way that I'm going to free myself up to have that time. Business owners, anyone with a position of responsibility, they're getting inundated. I mean, you've heard you've heard the thing like give a busy person something to do because they're going to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
If you just overload them, though, you're likely not getting what you want out of them.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting all the stuff done, but where their real value is in their ideas. That's what you want to give them time to do. So I think we do have to set boundaries. We have to block off that time. We have to be really intentional, like you had said earlier, Greg, about making sure that we are spending time on those things. Without a doubt, business owners, I know other, executives, they just get overwhelmed by the day to day. And, again, you're just going through the motions. And I think that's where you lose sort of that engagement, the passion. You're just doing the work and you're feeling held back by the fact that you don't have the time to dream and be an agent of positive change and make things better. I mean, that's the.
Oh no, did we freeze again?
Right? When you can take something that's ordinary and make it extraordinary, then it's way awesome.
That's,
my internet looks good.
No worries. We'll keep rolling. We're all good.
We'll make it. If we freeze every now and then, we'll throw in another one of our sponsors. So we'll make
there
it
you
work.
go. Okay.
Is that one of the things that came to mind whenever you're talking about that was, whenever I've hired people in the past, I never really hired people for what they knew. I mostly hired people for how they thought. And so a lot of the probing questions I would ask were never a specific scenario about a job. It was a specific scenario regarding like what happened, how did you fix this, how did you solve this, or tell me about a way in which you did this and that. And I feel like that's something that making that time for that creative space is something that's a really good thing to remember, because you can ask yourself those questions. What if this were to happen? Or, hey, we were successful in this. Why were we successful in this? And even jotting those things down as daily affirmations or reminders that you can pull from that file later on, I think would be great. So I really appreciate you saying that you want to, that we need to dedicate time for that type of creativity.
Yeah. And I think it really goes back to what Greg was saying too. We really have to be conscientious about what we are spending our time doing, right? Really kind of thinking about, hey, what is this work what am I doing, right? And why am I doing it? How does it align with my personal mission statement or the mission overall? Do I even care about this? Do I want to work for a company, or do I want to be here? Am I working with the right clients or customers? All of those things, we have to have time to evaluate them. Otherwise, we get into this lack of engagement, lack of productivity. I mean, then your work becomes a penitentiary.
Yeah, and you talked about boundaries. Personally, I'm a very task-oriented person. I flourish on to-do lists, and I'm a big planner. And for me, that really gives me kind of my scope of what I need to get done, not only for the day, but for the week, quarter, and the year. Like that's how comprehensive I can get with it. But as a result of that, if I'm not careful, as I complete my tasks, I start adding more and adding more and adding more. So before you know it, I'm just going. And so I've learned that I have to actually put time to block and say, this is going to be time for just free time, creativity. And in fact, in my work schedule, I have times every week that I block off just to do creative planning, creative thinking. Because if I don't do that, then it gets filled up with just basic work. And so when you talk about boundaries, that really reminded me that that's got to be something that I continue, because historically that's been an area that I've struggled.
Yeah, I tell people you should make a stop doing list.
Mm-hmm. That's
it's almost as important as your to-do list. Like stop doing that.
Actually, it's funny. I used to actually work with Greg at Bogle Alcove, and our CEO used to say, like, to hear her say it, like, was pretty impactful as well. She said, you need to make a stop doing list. Said almost the exact same thing, because it was getting to that point where both Greg and I were just loading ourselves too much, but we were still getting everything done. But the thing was, like, at what detriment to the quality, at what detriment to our sanity as well. So that really resonated with me when she mentioned that, because she is quite the doer as well. So to have her say it, it was pretty impactful.
Yeah, and I mean, most people who start to take on more responsibilities, they are task oriented, right? They're very busy. They're big contributors. They find ways to change things, and that results in more work. If you're an improver of a process, you're the one who's bringing about the change. You're the one making oh, well, we need to make this better. We have 500 more things to do now.
I always said every bullet point you see on my list has about 100 sub bullet points underneath each one.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
Well, Susan, I have to share this. In just the 10 minutes or so that we've been talking, I can already tell that you are very different from the stereotypical accountant that I think most of us think of when we hear that word. I'm curious, when you're working with very busy, very active business owners that I'm sure can be very stubborn in terms of their business and taking in new advice from someone like yourself. So how do you get business owners to embrace the different changes that you recommend? How do you go about really bringing your expertise to really influence some of these companies and business owners that you're working with?
Yeah, so the recipe that you alluded to earlier is really the key.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we have to do first is we have to remove from them these ordinary tasks, these routine, repetitive tasks that frankly they don't do very well. And that's all the accounting work. Most people who start a business don't start a business to become great at accounting. They just, unless you're a crazy accountant like us, right? But they naturally have to do it because it's fundamental to every business. Mm-hmm. Most of the time they are, and this is not uncommon, any entrepreneur, they're DIYers. They're like, I can learn it, I can take it on. But just because you can do it doesn't mean you should be doing it. Mm-hmm. So the first thing we have to do is we have to remove that from them and get them regimented, reliable accounting reports, financial information on a routine basis. That's like step one, is like stabilize, right? Mm. For a lot of these business owners, it's clean up. So it's clean up and then stabilize and get into a routine pattern. So once we've got all that done, then they've got so much more information and they have a lot more time. So they're getting better information to make better decisions in their businesses. They're not having to do that work, right? And now we can take off our accounting hat and put on our tax hat, which is saying, interesting. We know what's going on in your business now. We understand what your priorities are, where you're going, how everything is moving. How do we save you tax dollars? What in the tax code can we leverage in order to reduce your tax burden? Every dollar you can keep in your business, you're going to get an ROI. You send it to the IRS, there's no ROI on it. There's not a thank you note. There's not there's nothing. You get nothing.
Right.
So we've got that's really sort of those two elements right there are essential. And then we sort of sprinkle in these, what I'd like to call the advisory services, helping them understand the priorities in their business. I mean, really asking them a bunch of questions so that they have, and it's an epiphany almost of like, oh, yeah, I really should be working on that. Okay, let's write it down and let's put it into a format and give it to them. Like we print it out, a tangible, like this is what we're going to do this year. This is how we're going to measure our success. These are all the tasks that we're going to do. Who's going to work on it? We have all of this mapped out for them. And when you take all of that together, and we've been super intentional about all of it, right? Everything is like the ingredients and the instructions are all laid out for them. Then what that really results in is enterprise value. So the value of their business is going to rise. They're not doing all the work anymore. And then we're going to accomplish their personal and professional financial goals. I mean, it works. Now they have to be willing to almost succumb to the, like, I'm not going to be doing all the stuff. I'm going to be reviewing it versus doing it. So forcing them sometimes, let go, you got to let go, let go. That is, I think, and pushing them towards the road of leadership, right? And this is something that from Vistage we learned so much about, is that leadership is critical. Many of these business owners don't even know what it's like to be a leader just yet. I mean, I've had to learn myself And it's an incredible journey if you be willing to just let go of those tasks so you can assume that position and begin to navigate your company in a completely different direction. So it just is that's where the transformation, that's the outcome, right? That outcome is the transformation that they get.
That's really interesting there, because you mentioned about sometimes you just kind of have to let go as well. It'd be interesting to hear from your perspective as a business owner as well. Where did you find something that you needed to let go of? Where did you pass that on to others? And did you have that same experience of like, no, I can do it, let me do it? And was it as difficult as you've seen other people go through?
Oh man, I love delegating. It's like I don't have any problem with it until it doesn't go right. That's what everybody says, right? I mean,
Right.
typical accountant, right? I want to do it all, so then I don't have to redo it. But for me personally, yeah, I've had challenges letting stuff go. But then I've had some realizations of like, I hired a director of our accounting services team, actually a promotion from within our company. And I was, talking to her and she was like, I feel like I'm not really running this. Like you're still sort of running part of this and I'm not really responsible for it. And I was like, thank you for telling me that. That is exactly what I needed to hear. I am now relinquishing all of that. It's you make all the decisions. I'm here to consult if you need just a sounding board, but hiring decisions, how you allocate work, how you manage projects, you own it. And if you want it, then I will give it to you. I do not want you to feel like I'm undermining your credibility or taking that away. That it's yours if you want it. So I think for me, that's a little bit, you naturally just go to what you're good at, you can do it, right? So there really has to be some bravery in the conversation for somebody to be able to say to you like, hey, I need you to stop doing that. So I can own it. I can't own it if you're just constantly trying to control it. So just gotta let it go. That it has been hard. There are some elements that are still continue to be, I'm a work in progress, just like everybody else. A lot of other things have been really easy to let go though.
Susan, in our Vistage meeting that we had last month, we actually framed the conversation around leadership and leadership behaviors. And our Vistage coach, Ken Stibler, brought a Gallup report that talked about 7 behaviors that indicate great leadership. And I'm going to name what those 7 items are. And I'd love to hear from you if one of them jumps out as one that you feel like you do really well, and maybe share a little bit about that. And then I'd like to follow up if there's maybe one that you feel like is on the weaker side of things, and maybe what you're doing to develop it and get stronger. So the 7 behaviors for leadership performance, according to Gallup, and this is over decades of research and study, are 1, building relationships, 2, developing people, 3, leading change, 4, inspiring others, 5, thinking critically, 6, communicating clearly, and 7, creating accountability.
Okay, so I can tell you right now, the driving change, that's me. I am a change person. I thrive on change. Like, let's keep changing it. Let's keep changing it. Like to me, it's the relentless pursuit of improvement. That's what I call it. That is driving change. We just are never satisfied. We always want to get better and better and better. That can wear people out. I will say that. They're excited when they see the results of the change. And in a lot of cases, what I've learned in that is that the relationships matter in the change process. So if you don't have good relationships with people, you're going to be a lot less likely to get the change accomplished in your organization. You need the support of your people because they're the ones going to be doing the work. So it is fundamental to have the relationships to drive the change. Not that I'm always the best at the relationships. I'm always so busy doing the other things that I have to go make time to hang out with people, talk to them, see people within the office, and just, I could spend all my day, just talking on the phone and sort of, being the strategist, if you will. I have to force myself to go and be like, hey guys, good morning. This is what we're working on, and communicating and building up. How are you doing? How was your, how was the happy hour last night? All those things, right? That's the stuff that you're going to need the support of your team. So you've got to invest the time in the relationships. And I struggle on that.
You're talking to two guys who wrote a book called The Pursuit of Growth, which ultimately is based in relentless improvement.
Right.
So we can understand exactly what you're talking about. And one of those chapters that's fundamental to it is relationships. So we are definitely on the same page. So the second half of the question, and if I need to read those 7 again, Susan, let me know. But was there one that jumped out at you that is an area that you're like, well, and I guess you were talking about the building relationships. That would be kind of the one that you're really working on. Is that correct?
Yeah, I work on that a lot. I think that I've done the strength finders thing. Yeah, and I rank better on like influence than relationship, which if you talk to Ken, he'll say, well, those can sometimes be substituted, but not in all cases. So I'm really trying to make an effort to build relationships in different ways. I say I struggle more in that department.
I can definitely tell by the way you were talking about some of the influence you have over other business owners, in which like you're constantly probably having to shift the way that you go about all of that, right? Building those relationships is different with every single person, but you do it through influence, right? That's how you start to really form those relationships and start to impact the change. So I love that. I love the fact that you brought that up, because I think you're probably much better at it than you give yourself credit for. I can totally imagine.
Well, I'll give an example. That sort of how a relationship was sort of born. So when we started working on some of the advisory things that we were doing, we sat down with one of our clients. It's a company based out here in Dallas, and they have 3 owners. And I asked, they came into the office, we sat them down at the conference table, and we're going to kind of go through like a SWOT analysis and just a few other things, just kind of get the temperature of where you are and where you're going. But the first question I asked them to answer and to write down separately, all on their piece of paper, no talking, was where you saw your company in 3, 5, 10 years. You guys, they all had different answers. So all of a sudden that conversation, it was more of a reconciliation, like, well, why were you thinking that? And what are you thinking? What are your priorities? And all that conversation that happened. That is one of the strongest relationships we have from a client perspective now, because we took the time to ask that question. And I think that, if you want to call it influence or whatever, but just taking the time to actually ask some of those questions for them, I felt it was so valuable to them, because it changed how their company, the trajectory of their company, because now they're all aligned. They're all like rowing the boat in the same direction. So you're right. Influence I think it can lead to the relationships. Right. It grows in a different way.
And I bet during that meeting, there was a lot less talking by you and your team and a lot more listening that was probably more appreciated than not, because that's probably the only time, like you mentioned, they've had the opportunity to really sit back and have that creative time and just take a pause and say, wow, like probably haven't thought about this as a group, and how can we go about then like having these conversations? I would imagine that's something that really stuck with them, and that's why they're a great client of yours, because they're able to have that free space and thinking time with you too.
Yeah, I love when business owners leave their office and come to my office, because the fires are not in our office, right? They're leaving, they're ringing phone and they're pinging emails and everything else, and they're literally removing themselves. It's almost like a retreat of, a moment of repose from the daily grind into an environment where we're asking these challenging questions, asking them to think a little bigger, paint a picture, cast a vision. And yeah, I think that is it can be very powerful. Some business owners resist it a little bit, right? So naturally it's like, well, I don't know, I don't really know yet, but if you press hard enough in the right ways, it starts to, it will eventually ooze out somewhere. You'll start to see what the vision is, and they'll get better at articulating over time. Yeah, that's what I want. Yes, that's what I'm going after. Yes, that's what my mission is. Yes, those are my priorities. And it just takes them a little bit of time to sort of like shed some of the daily, I don't know, gunk that is, accumulated of just I mean, the burden, all the burdens.
Well, you're very, it's very obvious that you're very successful at what you do, and your company is very successful. Can you talk a little bit about a failure or something that just did not go the way that you really intended it to go, and talk a little bit about the lessons learned?
Shoot, well, there's always a lot of those in accounting. It's accounting. It's a series of
Right.
problems. Well, I try to recall a massive failure. I mean, we actually just had a failure recently. I mean, it happens. There's things that
Absolutely.
just don't go right. But it's interesting because from that was born something, a change in our process. So we used to, like, if we get a new client, we will, go through the process of collecting a bunch of information that usually was routed through me. And I was the person who, would collect all the data and then assign it out to the team, and then everybody got started. Well, we had some serious lapse in communication. Things just didn't go right. We didn't collect all the data. I'm really busy. Maybe I don't communicate as effectively when we've got lots going on. And so we had discovered, like, okay, this is not working. Client was very dissatisfied. Their expectations weren't met. Things were slow. Turnaround time was bad. And velocity is everything in accounting. I mean, they need it yesterday. That's the whole reason they're coming to us to solve their problem. Like, please, I need my tax return 3 days ago. So one of the things that we've changed up in our practice is that we actually have an internal kickoff meeting. So anytime a new client is going to come on board, we all get together, and it's a time for me to share everything I've learned during the sales process, or my counterpart Maria, what she's learned if she's the one who's on, has the first interaction with the clients. And we're sharing what information we have, what we don't have, what we need to get, what we're going to talk about when we meet with the client. We just brainstorm tax planning strategies, all sorts of different things that we want to make it onto our list of things to address with the client. And then we'll adjourn from that, and then we'll turn around and schedule an external meeting with the client, introduce every single person on the team that's going to be working with the client, who does what, defining their role. And then we send them an email at the end saying, hey, here's everything we talked about. And then from that point forward, the engagement is officially launched. And that has changed everything. The client has a different experience. You don't fall into these pitfalls of, I didn't get the information. Oh, I thought you sent it. Oh, you sent it to Susan. Oh, it wasn't supposed to go, it was supposed to go to Shannon instead, or Christina, or whatever. We've avoided all of that. There's a central point of communication, and just revolutionary. So failures, they happen routinely in our business. They just do. But it's usually because we did not communicate expectations. We weren't responsive. This is a common complaint among for people of their accountants, right? It's things we're trying to transform in our business so that the ends are different. And then just making sure that we stay on top of projects, like really follow up, have an escalation procedure. Ultimately, that client left. They found a different solution, which just makes us sad because it's a failure on our part. I feel like we could have done a better job of managing it, but we learned a lot, and we learned that we need to change. And ultimately, we turn the failure into an improvement.
Yeah, that was a great example. And if people that listen to the show have heard Sammy or I say this a million times. We love the mindset and the phrase, I never lose, I win or I learn. But that's only true if that knowledge is applied. Right. And so I love the fact that you actually developed an entire process, and just you running through that actually made me think, even in the work that I do, and there's a lot of similarities in terms of setting expectations and then making sure that both sides are aligned with those expectations. Hearing what you talked about made me think, gosh, I could do one or two of those things a little bit differently and a little bit better just in hearing that example. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great story.
That's awesome. Good.
Yeah.
And I'm a process guy. I'm a creative guy, but I also love processes and procedures and all of that kind of stuff. It's a weird mix, but there's nothing better than whenever you have found a way to improve a process, And then it just exponentially helps not only your business, your plan, your timing, whatever that may be, even a creative process, finding that those little subtle tweaks, or sometimes it's a major overhaul that's needed, but you finally had that spark to be able to say, ah, there it is. That's
Mm.
what was missing. I think those are those moments that really can transform a business, which you've actually, just told us about.
Yeah. And the other thing is like get people together in your organization
Yes.
who are who are following these processes and propose an idea and then say, could we make that idea better? And then use it as a springboard. I like to walk around the office and I'm like, thank you for taking that idea and making it better. Thank you
Mm.
for taking that idea and making it better. Like that's how it's supposed to work, right? It's all of us coming together for this improvement. It's not just Susan has ideas, we need to implement them. It's I have an idea. What do you guys think?
Mhm.
How could we take this and apply it? And before you know it, it's like way better than I could have ever, as an individual, one individual, have ever thought of. And so, yeah, it's just bringing these people together. But kind of going back to those relationships, you got to get that input from
Mhm.
people. They want they want their voice to come out.
Right.
Sometimes you have to encourage them to talk about it. But I think that that's a really important component of driving the change, and learning from your failures is really going back to the team and saying, okay, what could we have done differently? And it's okay. Mistakes happen. Sometimes things don't go right. It's all right. We're not going to beat ourselves up, but we are going to make sure that if we can prevent it in the future, we should.
Yeah,
You've
absolutely.
had the chance to work with a lot of business owners. You're a business leader yourself. What are some areas where you see leaders go wrong? Kind of a
Mm.
general question. What pops to the top of your mind when I say that?
No vision,
Mm.
lack of leadership, period. So a lot of business owners think, well, I'm just the best at my business, so I'm just by default the leader, but they have zero leadership skills. None. They do not inspire or motivate people. They're not driving change. They're not building relationships. All the 7 things that you mentioned, they're not doing it. They're just, and this is very common, especially among CPAs, right? So I am the practitioner. I am the most experienced person in the firm. I've done the most, I've seen the most, right? And so I am the person who is by default going to run everything, right? I'm the leader. But so many CPAs lack leadership skills. They're not business people. They're not inspiring and motivating their staff to grow and develop, and turning them from preparers into advisors. It doesn't happen. And that's just a fundamental flaw of getting out of this mentality of, I am, just because I'm good at it doesn't mean that I can't move past it to be the leader of the organization, right? I'm still good at those things, and I can let go of having to be the person doing the work to be the person leading the people doing the work.
You know,
I've
go ahead, Sammy.
I've used this analogy before that I always talk about timing your lens and your filter, almost like a camera analogy. So I think that there's a season for every type of leader that's out there. And I think that those leaders go through those different things. So if you look at it from whatever time they're in, whatever lens they're using in that particular day, and then whatever filter is like kind of in their way of judgment. Like sometimes leaders can pass that information on to somebody and it's crystal clear and they understand it and they're motivated and they rally behind them. Other times it's a communications issue where you're in that interesting moment, you're looking through an interesting lens and maybe you have a cloudy filter. So the image that you're providing is blurry, or maybe it's just not as in focus. And sometimes you wonder, like, why didn't they understand that? Like, or what could I, good leaders say, what could I have done better? And they ask that as well. Like, what could I have done better to help this situation? And I think that that's a fundamental mind shift that happens when you go from somebody that is a practitioner to somebody who can lead and influence, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, the other thing about it is you hear this from anybody who's an exit planner for businesses, right? Is as soon as you start a business, you should be thinking about how you're going to exit from it,
Mm.
right? And to me, the question is maybe not how you're going to exit, but what do you really want?
Mm.
And what do you want? Do you want a payday at the end of the thing? Or are you trying to create a pathway for your employees to now have a company? Maybe it'll be a purchase program, right? Maybe there's some key people in your organization you've recruited from other places that you want to, create an opportunity for them to buy it from you. What do you want from this? And a lot of times they don't know. And that's the problem is if you don't know what you want, you're never going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have to like backtrack a little bit and start asking yourself some really big questions about like, why am I doing this? And what's the point of it? And what happens if I'm not here? Right. And where do I want to be if I'm not here? And creating a life outside of your business, outside of your work, so that you can really begin to have a plan for once your business there's a succession plan of some kind, right? Once you exit, what does that look like? And I think that's kind of going back to that lens and that filter. They really have to start to look through a different lens at some point and say, okay, my business is growing. I'm in this life cycle of my business. It's like Willy Wonka. I can't make chocolate forever. I'm going to have to find a way, for someone else to make everlasting gobstoppers.
We talk about leadership, and I feel like from a professional standpoint, we're still in a pandemic, and it's not COVID-19, but it's a pandemic of people that are dissatisfied with their jobs. And we've done all the research, and we know the primary reason why people are dissatisfied with their job is because they're dissatisfied with their supervisor or their boss. And it's amazing how when I'll have conversations with people and they're complaining about their job and their boss, one of the questions that I've started asking is, what type of leadership training or skills do you think your boss has been given, or have they had, or did they just get that position to be your boss because they were there the longest and they jumped into that role, or because they were really good at a certain role, therefore the company gave them a leadership role? And it's amazing how people are like, I don't know that they had any training. And so just, from a world at large, what do you think can be done to help equip people to be better leaders?
Oh, I think awareness is probably number one. There ultimately has to be the leader at the top has to have that awareness of like looking downward into the organization to be able to say, this could be better if this person could rise up. But I think that's sort of a philosophy of business philosophy and even a management philosophy to some degree, that you want people to rise up, to take over these, critical functions in the company, to own them, to be the leaders of them, to be accountable in the organization. If the overall leader doesn't see that, then I'm not sure you really ever get there. And that's why you see people, sell their businesses, or, we get a new CEO, or, things like that, because ultimately the company is going to decline if the main leader just does not recognize how we need people to grow.
If you're familiar with John Maxwell, he's written many books, and he's, known as being an amazing coach and leader in the world of business. But I read one of his books that talked about the number one, metric in terms of what is a quote unquote great leader. A great leader is someone who builds other great leaders. And I've only heard him say that. And I can tell you, I've been in a lot of meetings or presentations where that question's asked, and I'll give that answer, and they're like, oh yeah, that's great, but actually it's da-da-da-da, and they go somewhere else. But I'm like, you know what, if you really think about it, the answer that I just gave based on John Maxwell, that is the definitive answer. If you can build other leaders, that's the test, the true test of how great of a leader you are. And really that kind of goes to the essence of what you were just saying.
Yeah, I tell my business partner all the time, if we can raise up people who are CPAs, or people who weren't CPAs, and make them CPAs and make them really awesome advisors, if they ever leave, they're gonna go off into the world and they're gonna do amazing things. And that will be because of what we saw in them and what we instilled in them. And that makes me just like a little upset just thinking about it, because it truly can be, that's a legacy. That's remarkable. That's like, goes on forever. And I think leaders just have to recognize that you have no choice but to grow these people up. Even if there is a risk that they're going to leave and go somewhere else. I mean, what happens? I heard this somewhere where like, what happens if you don't grow them? So what's going to happen? Oh,
yeah, and they stay.
Yeah, and they stay. Right? You've seen that. It's like a little meme or something like that. I mean, but that is so true. But I like to think, of course, because I'm an eternal optimist, I like to think about all the awesome things that could happen if they do leave and they go and they take this knowledge and they go inspire other people to be great. Think about think about the ripple effect that that could send into the universe. That's exciting to me. That's the change we want to have. That's stuff that's, I mean, where's accounting? It's like way back there in the rearview mirror, right? It's so far back there. It's a vehicle. It's a vehicle to helping people to achieve their greatness, and really come into their own, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have some really inspiring, like, and insightful comments. Who are the types of people that inspire you? Who inspires you in your life?
Hmm. Well, I think I'm inspired by the people around me a lot of the times. But I really am a fan of and Dr. Wayne Dyer. I mean, I love listening to him. So I listened to this podcast. It was a Simon Sinek podcast, and it was the CEO of Spanx.
Hmm.
She was a guest on his podcast.
Sarah
and
Blakely, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And she talked about how she had this very traumatic stuff happen when she was 16. She said that she saw her best friend get killed. And then, like, within the same week, her dad left. Her parents got divorced, and he like packed a suitcase and left. And but before her dad left, he handed her a cassette series tape, like How to Be a No Limit Person by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And she said it completely changed her life. And I said, okay, well, I got to go. I got to sign me up. I have to listen to this.
I need
right
those cassettes,
now.
right?
Yes. And I had listened to, Dr. Wayne Dyer like years before, but it's sort of like you kind of need this prompting to like revisit something. Like, it's almost like maybe I wasn't ready for all of it. But then in listening to that, again, it's all about the mindset. It's all about thinking differently, reframing problems, being a lot more conscientious of every thought that you are thinking and why you're thinking it, and truly turning it around into ways you can impact in a reverse way, like push the positive back out into the world. So even if it comes to you negative, you can turn around and push it back out positive.
Yeah, I call it replace weak thoughts with strong thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's an exercise that I have to do, I mean, almost throughout my entire day, because it's amazing that voice inside your head that can continue just to tell you all the negativity. You can't do this. This is wrong. This is what's going to happen. And so it's silencing it and telling it to shut up, or it's taking what it's telling you and just spinning it. And, Sammy and I, we both talk about this a lot, and I write it at the very top of my legal pad every day where I have all my work. But it's a saying called equip with the right attitude, life is limitless. And I truly believe that there's nothing that you can tell me that I can't make a spin. Even if it gets a little bit out there, I can make a spin on why there's no limits to what I'm going to be able to accomplish or what we're going to be able to accomplish together.
I love it. Yes. Amen. 100%. And I think the thing is that so many people, I mean, I have 2 teenage daughters, so I see this a lot. And I could be hormones, but it is a lot of negativity. They just don't know how to separate the emotions and all those negative thoughts from their intelligence. And I don't know where I read this. Maybe this was from Dr. Wayne Dyer, but I have it written on my board too. And it says, I will not let my emotions overpower my intelligence. Right. So that's really doing that control. And I like to talk about like negative thoughts. I think of them as a wave. This is my personal thing where it's like, it's creeping up, right? Almost to the point where it's going to overtake you and you've got to like push it down. Right. So just like you were talking about, Greg, real similar, like trying to force these things away. I mean, that is requires something I call mental fortitude.
Yeah.
There's mental fortitude.
There's a new word that it's new to me that I really like. We talk about mental health and we know how big mental health is in terms of our world. The new phrase is mental fitness. And I love that because it's the idea that, we work out our physical body, we need to work out our mind as well. And there's lots of different ways that we can go about doing that. But I encourage people to really talk to trainers, talk to professionals, and identify what is your mental fitness plan. And I can share with you one of the new things that I do in terms of like fear and anxiety is I've come up with this concept called use it and then lose it. And so if you think about it, we all think that fear and anxiety is a bad thing. Well, I can make an argument that it's actually, when used properly, it's a very good thing. Just like fire, if you have fire in a fireplace, it's a great thing. You put fire on the couch, well, that's not going to go so well. So anxiety and fear, right, are meant to let us know there's something that we need to be aware of and we need to take action. So that's use that fear to know, wow, or that anxiety, I've got a decision to make. Well, then that's where it goes to your plan. And once you decide, okay, now it's time to make my plan and take action, the fear has served its purpose. Now I've lost it. That emotion is gone. Now I'm going to go to the logical spot of moving forward with my plan and trusting where I'm going. And that mental exercise, of course, I've got to work at it, and I had to really kind of put that process in place. But it has made such a profound impact on my life to where I no longer have those days of just being anxious about that thing that may or may not even happen in the future. I use it, plan for it, I lose it, move forward.
Brilliant. Love it. That's great. I think that's going to be your new book. You guys are right.
Maybe Sammy, we need to mark that and go back, because I probably won't remember how to say it again.
Yeah, that's how this whole thing started. Was Greg and I took a life journey on which both of us were looking at self-improvement and ways that we want to learn through personal development and growth. And one day he walked into my office and said, like, hey, I kind of want your expertise on blogging and writing a blog. I think I want to write a blog about, some things that I'm going through. And I said, well, how about you do one better? Like, how about you write a book about it? And so I think we have to be careful when we challenge each other, because I think book number 2 might be right around the corner.
Sounds like there's a lot of good stuff in there for sure already.
Well, I'm gonna steal some you've already mentioned, but I'll give you credit for it, no doubt about it.
Okay, sounds good. I'll write the foreword.
There you go.
Deal.
Something that you talked about a while ago is I didn't want to lose this thread, though, was talking a little bit more about your goal oriented, your focus specifically on, like, we've talked a lot about the professional life. We'd love to learn a little bit more about your personal goals and how you go about accomplishing personal goals. So can you share with us a goal that you have and maybe something that you've accomplished and one that you're working towards and you want to get better at?
Yes. So my most recent personal goal, and I started last April, was I went on a weight loss journey.
Nice.
Yeah. So I lost 45 pounds in 6 months.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
First and foremost. Yeah.
Yeah. It was hard. It was hard. I made my husband do it too. He lost 80 pounds. So.
Accountability. Wow. Whoa.
That is amazing.
Yeah. And that was really important to me. Similar to the sort of the mental fitness, for me, physical fitness, I had struggled with back pain and some other things. And I was like, I just have to get stronger. And so I sort of paired that weight loss with also sort of this idea of like, I've got to exercise better, more frequently, so I can get stronger. Because to me, when I feel good and I look good, physically, it really translates into that like ability, like I could take on the world. Right. So I really needed to spend some time getting back to that. So I started that, and I feel like we were successful, and it's hard to maintain, as you can imagine. I mean, like, who doesn't love French fries and margaritas and like everybody, right? So that's really good. And then because I'm a crazy person, I immediately started doing Invisalign.
Oh yeah.
So I'm still doing that, which has been an interesting journey too. Both of my daughters have had braces. And my husband had braces. I'd never had anything to do with my teeth done. Wow. Oh my goodness. It is like, I say that I was not mentally prepared for that type of pain. It was very different. I'd never really gone through that before. So that's on my goal list. And then I just restarted my diet. I'm doing a 6-week kickboxing challenge. Nice. So I'm trying to kind of get a little stronger along the way. So my focus right now for me personally has just been a lot of just self-improvement. And it's interesting because now my daughter has started going to the gym. So that's sort of exciting to kind of see some of the impacts. I mean, and their diet has improved. Obviously, there's not as much junk food around the house and things like that, which is really good. So you can start to see the impact of this. I mean, my husband doesn't have to take any prescription medication anymore. That's a win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like some of these I mean, it's sort of interesting to me, like some of the personal stuff, it really starts to translate into professional success.
There was a saying out there, and I'll butcher it, but there was somebody that mentioned this once. When you show up for yourself, you have the ability to show up for others. And I've always loved that because, my background, my story is through personal weight loss and development as well. And so I know the struggles, I know the pain points, I know what other people go through as well when they're trying to improve their lives, specifically on their weight loss journeys, because so many people, they get caught up in life and work and whatever that may be, and they forget to take care of themselves along the way. So, I mean, kudos 100% to you for even having the courage to start the journey and recognizing where you were, and then having that accountability partner there that supported you along the way too. And you know what? It's an entire journey. I've been on my weight loss journey and my fitness journey for the last 10 years or so, probably more than that now, where I really dedicated time to doing that. And it's changed my life dramatically. And Greg knew me on both sides of the coin. So, but someone that I've always admired throughout their process, the ability to continue doing what they're doing, is Greg. Greg has been a phenomenal at sharing his routines and success stories when physical fitness comes up in topics as well. So I'm glad you were able to do that with a partner, because that is a fundamental way to improve the lives of yourselves and others.
Yeah, it was good. It was interesting too, because my husband had been overweight for pretty much the entirety of his life. And so it was really interesting because so many different things became revealed, like as that weight started to like, well, I was always really conscientious about this. And I, even getting on airplanes and the airplane seats, what if I couldn't fit? I mean, like all these really interesting things started coming out. And I feel like that was freeing in a way, especially for him, like to talk about that, like all the different ways that he was sort of free from some of these burdens too, which made it even more exciting, to be successable and to see to see someone else's life becoming impacted, and I mean, shoot, that's what we're all in it for, right? Like, it's great if I change and I improve, but when somebody else improves, it's like, oh my gosh, you just get like, I mean, it makes me want to keep doing more and more.
Right.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that why. And that's what's so important for people when they're going on that journey, especially when it comes to your health and wellness, is really defining what your why is. Kind of like we talked earlier about that mission statement. And, one of the things for me is that there's still so many things that I want to do as I get into my late 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, that I don't want to be the person, God willing, that is unable to do things because my health isn't there. And there's a saying that we've probably all heard that I love, but it's, if you ever have to ask how important your health is, go talk to someone who doesn't have it.
Yeah.
And that really is a truth. We can have all the material things in the world. We can have all the statuses and all the acclaim, but when your health goes away, nothing else matters. And so the things that we can do now are going to make, pave that road for the future of where we're going in terms of our well-being. And you're exactly right. It translates to every single aspect of our lives, including our profession, our sleep, just our family, our friends, every single thing we do. Our health is just that cornerstone of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I feel like I have a lot more clarity. I mean, it's interesting to even say that out loud, but like, I honestly feel like I actually know a little bit more about myself. It's been revealing in that I can better understand my own motivations. I start to have more awareness about myself. Like I think about like, even if I'm going to eat something bad, I think about it, you know what I mean? A little bit differently. And I have better conversations with myself, like about everything now, you know what I mean? Because if I can talk about talk with myself about food and energy and fuel and exercise and making myself do things that, maybe aren't so exciting all the time, or I don't want to do them. What else could I be doing? Right.
Right.
Really, that clarity begin, like the fog of like all this, the noise fades away, and we're able to like get really laser focused on like, ooh, that looks like a really good place. I need to go that direction. That's where I need to be.
So I'm curious, with someone like you that has accomplished, both you and your husband, the goal that you just shared that you accomplished, that is a major challenge. And so again, I echo Sammy when he says, congratulations, that's incredible. I'd be curious to know, do you have a certain type of evening or morning routine that kind of helps you kind of just set forth the day?
Yeah, we're up early and we're out there walking or running or doing some kind of exercising. That's usually how I start my day. And it's great because I wake up talking. My husband says, "You're either talking or you're asleep, Susan." That's pretty much it. So he doesn't talk much while we walk, but I'm talking the whole time. And I'm like talking things out, right? Like I'm talking them out about, really thinking about how we should maybe run that outbound sales process. Like, I really think we should work on this, and this should be the priority. And, it just like, I don't know, it just starts flowing out of me. But to me, that's the best way for me to start my day. It allows me to just sort of like, I'm just like, it's like I'm unleashed from all of my like meetings, and I don't look good and it doesn't matter. I'm just out there like really just pushing myself physically, and it helps me to sort of just get my brain moving, get my blood going, get everything just kind of like, I can feel the flame start to like tick up, you know what I mean? It's like the fuel is starting to really kick in. And it really, I mean, some of my best ideas I have doing that.
Yeah, they
Now,
talk about flow state, and
yeah.
that can happen there too. A lot of times where you get into that mental state in which things just start to come naturally, and things like spark, you get that creative headspace, and it just flows. And next thing you know, you're in the zone, and you can't wait to get into like start working on something, but you have to turn around and walk all the way back home before you can do that. So again, you get to process all of that together. I'm an early riser as well. I wake up every morning at 5:15, and I'm in either on the Peloton running or lifting weights by about 5:25. Like I have a very set process in which I do. Like I've shared this picture before, but like I lay out all my clothes in the order I'm going to put them on, like on the bathtub. Like I just go right down the road, put them on and go. But I feel like if you do something difficult or you do something challenging, the very first thing, then the rest of your day is going to be so much easier if you've already challenged yourself as a very first thing that you can do. And getting those small wins, like you hit a new record, you do something different. I mean, even with my kids, I tell them, you wake up and you make the bed. You've already won something for the day by making your bed.
Yeah.
And so I think you can do that with physical fitness and exercise as well.
Yeah, it reminds me, the director of our accounting services team, she had to work on this. I normally have done it in the past, but I handed the task off and she was going to do it. And it is probably one of the most challenging things. It's a special reporting software, and it's complicated. It's just mind-boggling.
You had me at reporting software.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, right. Like, I mean, you really like, I'm not sure if you need coffee or wine to get through it, but you need something. So, I get pinged with text messages, and I can't remember, I was unavailable. And so she had to work through it. I wasn't there to help her. And I mean, it was lots of messages like, I can't do this. This is so hard, blah, blah, blah. And then like a few hours later, I did it. I'm done.
Nice.
And then when I had a conversation with her later, she was taking on something really difficult. And I said, do you need help with that? You might need some help. That's going to be hard. And she's like, if I can do that reporting thing, everything else is easy. And I was like, oh, that is so great. What a great revelation that you just had. I mean, you got through the hardest thing, and what a brand new perspective you have. I mean, one tiny little struggle led to this little, like, I can do anything. Don't even worry about it. I got it. No problem. That's so cool to see in other people. It's great to see in ourselves too, but it's really cool to see in others as well. And I just think about that a lot. of her kind of having that moment, you know? I mean, so great for her. Like, I can do anything now. I am on top of the world. I got it.
So how much of your personality, and for lack of a more, uh, uh, I guess, a crazy word, your awesomeness has come from you being a Port Lavaca sand crab?
Oh my gosh, right? Woohoo! Like pinch them crabs, right? So I would say a lot of it actually. I had a very unique experience as a kid. So my parents moved from Delaware to Port Lavaca when I was 7 years old. Um, and at that time, the company that my dad worked for was a Taiwanese based company. And so when we moved from Delaware, they also transferred a lot of their Taiwanese employees. And so I went to school with some amazingly smart people. And I really believe that those people elevated me. They changed my life because they were incredibly smart. And I mean, you know what happens when you get smart people and then you got teachers who were teaching smart kids, the teachers get better. I mean, everybody was better because the kids were smarter. I mean, like, you just got pulled along. You were like, well, you just have to be smarter. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, I look back to my very, would it be, this is very small town, 10,000 people. And there was a sophomore. He was a sophomore at the time I was a senior, and he would come over to our house and teach all the seniors calculus. He hadn't even taken calculus yet. He was that smart. He went on to become an astrophysicist. He went to Rice University and became an astrophysicist. He was teaching us calculus seniors
Well,
as a 15-year-old.
I can believe you, because I actually know someone else from Port Lavaca that is an extremely exceptional person.
Really?
And that is Sammy Gonzalez.
Yeah.
No way. You're
Yeah.
from, no way.
I am from the small town of Port Lavaca. Yep, I was born and raised there. I lived all until I was 18 and left for college. So as we were doing some research, preparing for the show, I saw that and my jaw hit my desk. I said, "You got to be kidding me!" Like,
no way.
someone else from Port Lavaca. So yeah, so I lived out like on Highway 87 as you're heading out to Victoria.
Yeah.
Over there by the cornfields. Like, that's where I grew up, was right in that little subdivision that's out there. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because Alcoa, Formosa, and all the different the chemical plants. My parents worked for Dow Chemicals, which was Union Carbide at the time. But but yeah, incredibly smart people that we live with. An incredibly unique town, small town. I still have family that lives there, and we visit about every other year. We'll go back and visit too. But yeah, I could not believe it when I saw that you
That's
lived in Port Lavaca,
crazy.
Texas.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Well, it definitely is a small world, but yeah, my parents still live in Victoria.
Oh wow, yeah. I have
Mhm.
my aunts and uncles still live in Victoria as well. And like I said, going back there is just I'm so prideful of the Gulf Coast and just a different way of life. But I tell people all the time that I think that's what shaped the way that who I am, because it allowed us enough freedom to get in a lot of trouble, but not too much trouble by being like in a really big city as well. So we were
Yeah,
able to figure things out on our own and really form some really good relationships.
you're right. And I've been ruined from any type of lake fishing because
Yes.
I grew up fishing and saltwater fishing. And then so anytime we say, so let's go and fish in Lake Louisville or Lake Ray Roberts or something, like, no,
Yeah.
thank you. I'll have to go someplace else where there's salt water and we have dead shrimp. Then I'll be
Yes.
happy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
love
I
it.
think in our research we saw that you guys just missed each other. I guess kind of in the high school realm, but it's probably certain that you know a lot of the same people and the same town folks. So we just again thought that was so ironic and so cool that you
It's a
guys
small
came
world.
from the same part of Texas.
That is incredible. Awesome. All
Yeah.
right. I love it.
Well, this is the part of the show where we ask all of our guests, Susan, the same two questions. And Sammy, I'll jump in with the first one if you want to do the second one.
Sure.
But there's no right or wrong answer to this, and some of this is going to be similar to the conversation that we've already had. But probably the best way to frame this question is, what's the first thing that enters your mind when I ask you, what's one of the most, I guess, impactful, favorite, actionable routines or lessons that you've learned that's helped you in your journey of personal growth and development?
Always be curious. Just keep learning. Don't stop being inquisitive. Keep asking why. How could it be different? I mean, it's just like an undying desire to learn. I mean, at my dinner table, we have the conversations. Look it up. Look it up. Somebody get the phone. We gotta Google it, right? So we're always being curious. I think that curiosity leads to learning, which leads to growth. So just you gotta have it. It's gotta be there. It's just I don't know how else to really. Gosh, it's kind of strange. I'm not really sure how else to. I don't know how to make someone curious, but I think you have to find ways to be curious. Right?
I like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I've got to take that note down. That was a good one.
Well, I think it's the there was a speaker that we had recently that I had the privilege of listening to, that he talked about like the sweet spot of business and even personal life is when candor and curiosity come together. And when you combine those two things, just that's when things take off. Just candid curiosity really takes us to the next level. And I think it goes back to being a lifelong learner. And just when you understand the why that's so important. And I tell people all the time how blessed we are to live in a world where literally we have YouTube, where we can learn almost anything we can imagine. You know, we make fun of Google quite a bit. And yes, if you type in any type of like bump you have or ache you have, Google will tell you that you have cancer. But you can also find so much valuable information just through the internet or just through the people that we know. We're able to jump on a Zoom call together and have this conversation where, you know, years ago, this would not have been possible. So we have all this amazing technology. It's just people, we've got to find ways to motivate ourselves to actually use it.
Yes.
But love what you said.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we have a computer like in our pockets most of the time. Like, use it.
Most of the time, it's better than the computer that we have sitting on our desk as well.
Yeah.
I know. That's what I tell my girls. I'm like, you should never have a spelling error. You have a computer like readily available,
Yeah.
like pretty much attached to you.
Yep. And I was never a genius when it came to math. So I was always told we never have a calculator on us at all times. And yet I wear one on my wrist at all times. So if I ever need one, speaking of one of my favorite teachers of all time, she was Calhoun High School teacher, Mrs. Harkey was one of my teachers. Fantastic teacher. Yep.
Yes, I had her for algebra 2.
She grilled me. She brought me into extra tutorials, but I knew geometry like the back of my hand. Didn't do well in algebra, but that's a different story. So we'll move on to the next one. I loved her too.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Oh my gosh, Mrs. Harkey. Oh.
So I did have, I don't have it up on the wall behind me, but I know that inside one of the cubby holes, I do have some good artwork from Port Lavaca. I don't think you could. Oh no, it's at the very top. It's way, it's right there. Actually, you probably can't see it, but that is Robert De La Salle in Quebec. Yeah, so it's the big statue that's out at the beach. Yes. And so that's a picture of it right there that I keep because it reminds me of my hometown all the time. So
that is so cool.
I'm getting nostalgic.
I have a Calhoun Sand Crabs t-shirt in my closet.
Nice. That's so great. See, nobody else, like when you say like, you know, what are some of the craziest hometown mascots you've ever had? Sand Crabs is usually the one that takes the cake.
Y'all win.
Yeah.
Always.
You win.
All right. So the second question is a hypothetical question. And so I'm glad we're having some fun here because we're going to, the pursuit of growth, we're going to create a time capsule. And we're going to take that time capsule and we're going to ask you to write something on it and we're going to bury it. In 10 years, we're going to get together and we're going to dig it up and read our note. What would you write on your note?
Well, I'll write on it exactly what I say. I say this all the time, but it's always, I'm usually one saying it and maybe I wouldn't be the person reading it, but I would write on there, everything always works out better than we expect it to.
I love that.
So, and I can't imagine if we actually did write that down and log it up and we would hit the fast forward button and I were to read it, I'd probably like be, in tears because it probably would work. It's going to work out better than I can even imagine, everything will.
I love the gosh, and I was going to credit the book and I can't think of it, but the sentence was, you have survived 100% of your fears and anxieties, and things have always worked out. And so that made me think of that. But yeah, that's a powerful quote, and I think something that we all need to reflect on. And like you say, you may tell it to other people, but how often do we actually tell it to ourselves?
Yeah. Another thing that I say a lot that my daughter told me, I can't remember what the circumstances were, but I say this a lot to them. Like, you may not understand it, but you're going to have to accept it. And then she turned around and she said it to me, and I was like, whoa, wow, that was really hard to receive.
Yeah.
It was really easy to give that. It's really easy to say it, but when she said it back to me, I was like, well, I don't want to. I am not going to accept it. I don't want to. But that, it's interesting. I try to keep like a little list in my phone of things that are good reminders for me, just for me to like always go back to when I need a or whatever. But it's not usually my hard advice. It's usually the softer things. But I think maybe from this conversation, I need to be writing down some of these, maybe the tough love type things that I need, like I say to my kids, I say to my husband or whatever. I think I need to write those down and take my own advice.
When I was in college, my mama told me, she said, Greg, worrying is like a rocking chair. You can do it all day long and it gets you nowhere. I cannot tell you how many times I've told her that now. And she always tells me, I should have never told you that. But it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Sammy, here is both our favorite part of the show and obviously the most difficult part. So this is where, Susan, we're going to attempt to each share 3 takeaways that we've gotten from this conversation. I always admit that I try to cheat, and I usually try to throw in like 5 or 6 or 7. But Sammy gets on me and he holds me accountable. He's like, Greg, you got to keep it to 3. That's why it's so important.
I put him to work. Yes.
So I'm going to do my best to keep it to 3. But Sammy, since I have the issue with cheating, I'm going to let you go first and take the first takeaway, and we'll ping pong back and forth.
All right. So we've got a page full of notes here. Different things that were said. And again, like I was writing so fast on so many great things that you mentioned that I can only read about half of them, but I made sure to star the ones that really stood out to me. And the very first one, I talked about it earlier, is dedicating that time to allow yourself to have that creativity, like dedicating, like Greg said, putting time on your calendar, make the space for creativity. I think that everyone needs to remember to do that.
I love when you said happiness is a work ethic. And so I challenge people listening to this to really define what that means for them. What plan do you need to put in place? What habits, what processes do you need to put into your life to make sure that that's a priority? I mean, we all make our laundry list, our grocery list. Make your happiness list and execute.
You mentioned something when you were talking just about the daily tasks and everything that you're learning, everything you're doing. And what we've seen tonight and what we've heard tonight is that you're an amazing business owner. You focus on your people, you care about your people, you care about yourself as well. Because you mentioned the words, I'm a work in progress. And then you said, and we all are. And I think that's a great mindset to have, especially if you're going through something tough, you're going through an interesting challenge, maybe at work or personally. Just remember that you and others are a work in progress and have that mindset in dealing with those relationships. And I think you're going to continue to flourish and thrive.
You mentioned this statement in the context of business, and I also think it applies to just about every single aspect in our life, and that is, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. And I think you can really, really get deep into that in terms of how we treat each other, the decisions, the actions that we make, the sacrifices that we may take, the sacrifices that we pass over. There is so much wisdom in that quote. That's going to be something that, as a takeaway, I'm going to be exploring more in both my personal and professional life.
I am too. I'm gonna need to write that down.
Put that one in the notes, right? Yeah. So I was sure that Greg was going to steal my last one. So I actually I underlined it, and I was like covering it up with, just in case he had a secret spy camera here in my office. But one of the things that you said that I think that it was in the context of business, but I think everyone should just remind themselves and ask themselves this question in general: what do you want? And I think that it's something that we think about a lot from our businesses and like the things that we're trying to achieve for the day. But take back, again, it goes back to that creative mindset, but take a picture and say, what do you want? And start to really outline that. Make sure you have that so that you know what you're working towards.
Gosh, this is so hard to just keep it to 3. I feel like I'm just like breaking inside because there's so many that I want to share. Well, my third one really is just your personality and just your aura that you bring. And it goes along with when you said just be an agent of change. And I'm inspired by your enthusiasm and the way that you think not only about wanting to grow yourself, but it was so clear that what's important to you is growing others. And we had that conversation as a part of the show. And that can all be wrapped up in being an agent of change for yourself and for others. And man, how cool is that? I love everything about it.
Awesome. Wow. That's crazy. It feels good. Thank you.
Well, I think people that listened to this episode and heard you share your wisdom are going to feel good too. I think they're going to walk away with a lot of actionable tips. That's the goal of this podcast, is really to be able to help people understand how they can grow, what areas they should focus on, hear from other people, and ultimately just spark some thoughts and some actions of change in their lives. And I think we absolutely accomplished this. So thank you so much for your time today. Tell us where people can find you if they want to learn a little bit more about your business or about you. How can they reach out?
Well, best way to find out more about our company, MB Group, is at our website, mbgcpa.com. And you can email me at sbryant@mbgcpa.com. Or connect with me on LinkedIn, Susan Bryant. I'm active on there, and I love creating conversations with other business owners and other people in the accounting community, pretty much anybody. I love talking, and it's always great. And I love listening and hearing other people's stories and learning from them.
Well, thank you so much again for sharing everything that you've shared this evening. And I say this all the time, and I don't mean to sound repetitive when I say this, and our audience hears it, but I think we just scratched the surface of so many different topics, because we could have gone in depth about taxes. We could have gone in depth about personal strategies and all of that kind of stuff. But I think that we really had a fantastic and fascinating conversation that really got down to the core of who you were and the fascinating way that you go about your life and your business as well. So thank you for being open. Thank you for sharing all that. And maybe we could schedule a round 2 so we can get down to some of that tactical advice when it comes to taxes and the stuff that you can share with us around that topic as well.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, that might not be quite as interesting to some people, right?
Some people are pounding the dashboard like, "Where's the tax advice?" Right?
Yeah.
What receipts do I have to keep? I need to know.
Yeah. That'll be part 2, and maybe we'll include a couple bottles of wine or those margaritas that we talked about earlier, and we'll make it interesting. But we always say, if you want to reach out to Sammy and I, hit us up on our website at www.livetpg.com. That stands for Live the Pursuit of Growth, where you can purchase our book. You can view this podcast plus other podcasts. You can read our weekly blog, The 1 Minute Matters. Follow us on all the social media platforms. And ultimately, we want to encourage you to strive to be the best version of yourself. But with that, guys, it was a fun conversation. I look forward to doing it again.
Don't forget to smile.
Peace.
Have a great night.
Bye.